Hello, and welcome to Get Recc'd. I am your host, Louis Falgout.
And I am your other host, Stephen Falgout. Get Recc'd is our occasional podcast where every week I recommend something to Louis recommends something to me, and then we discuss it.
Yeah, and that is what we are going to do today on episode 47.
Hello,
we are going to discuss.
and welcome to
No! We're not going to discuss anything, I'm sorry. I just pressed the bad button. They heard my voice twice. This happens every time. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. The stream's ruined, as always, everybody. I'm sorry, I know. You're really looking forward to these first 3 minutes every time, and I screw it up for you. I need to get better, but it's all right.
But this is that 3-minute content that they come for.
Yeah, well, it starts now, okay? Everything before now doesn't count. It starts now. So we've got 3 minutes to fill dead air, Steven. How was your day?
Okay.
Was it good? Was it nice? That's good. I hope so. I'm really glad to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Wait, should we start from the top, Louis?
I think we should start from the top, yeah.
Okay, let me count you in.
Okay.
100. 99. Did you see what I was doing there? I was counting you in from 100.
Right. And the joke is that it would take a long time to start.
It was going to take a long time. All right, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, and welcome to NormieCast. Shit!
And I am your other host, Stephen Falgout. Oh boy, Louis, how's the quarantine going for you?
Well, you know, it's all right for me actually. I hope it's okay for our viewers here, though. I hope you're all doing okay. And if you know if things are a little rough, then Get Recc'd is your escapism for the next hour,
where you'll just get so wrecked, but in a good way.
You know, one of these days, somebody's gonna have to compile what our worst intro segments were. I have a feeling this is going to rank pretty high.
This would not be on that list. Let's be honest. If you meant best, put this on the top right there. Okay, so with that, Louis, should we talk about what you recommended to me?
Yeah, I think that we should. So last episode, Stephen, I recommended to you Bob Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited. This is Bob Dylan's seminal 1965 album where he went electric. Completely electric anyway, because the previous album, I guess half of it was electric. Yeah, that's pretty much it. What did you think?
Wow, what a spectacular piece of entertainment. I don't think that I have heard this all the way through ever. Obviously, I've heard tracks off of this, but I've never listened to the album front to back. So it was sort of a new experience in a way. As you mentioned, you know, as immediately as I started to listen to this, I was just taken by how great acoustically everything sounded, and especially the new electronic guitar, all that early electronic sound, which to this point is still pretty new and in vogue. Louis, correct me if I'm wrong, but he basically takes this to oh god, why can't I think of it right now? What was the big weed fest where he performed and Hendrix performed?
Woodstock.
And all of that, I think, is just first of all, you can tell that this is absolutely starting to become the times where he starts taking drugs. But other than that, I mean, just that the whole rock influence and all the electric guitar and even a lot of the blues influence, and even you can feel his folk influence in every single one of these songs. They really all just mesh so well and so iconically together right from the get-go. I mean, track 1 is just an all-time classic. I mean, taken off of this as a single or on even within the context of the album, Like a Rolling Stone is, 1, such a great opening track to this album, but 2, just such an amazing track and inspired not just whole swaths of music, but came to immediately inspire other rock groups and rock albums. that may or may not have taken their name from the song. And then even going past that, like Tombstone Blues and others on this album, as it starts to get more bluesy and more folky, they're really introspective, very poetic. At times, as I was listening to this album, I was just like taken aback by how can he even write this much? Like even the 11.5-minute song at the very end of this, Desolation Row, is completely lyrical from the start to the end. Whereas most songs of that length are going to have musical interludes or some musicality interspersed, and obviously this does, but literally it was like poetry for 11.5 minutes. And that it feels like that from the very beginning of this album at minute 1 to the very end of this album at like minute 51 or whatever. So that really struck me as well. And then you have songs like Ballad of a Thin Man that I really enjoy, and Tom Thumb's Blues, which again get into that more bluesy influence, a more folky influence, but again lyrically are just very precise. Acoustically, I really vibed with. Just front to back, this thing is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and it's worth noting too that like when you consider the historical significance of the album, like the fact that prior to this point, or prior to Bringing It All Back Home, I guess, but we'll say prior to this point because this was really the watershed moment. Like he was a folk singer in the folk revival, and you know, he infuriated that entire audience by doing this because I guess the assumption was that you know, he turned his back on authenticity somehow by doing this. That, you know, in order to be authentic, it's actually kind of similar to like the punk claim of like selling out later down the line. Is essentially what people were arguing and were mad about. But you know what's incredible about it is that if he kept making folk songs, just him and an acoustic guitar and a harmonica, album after album, you know, which he'd already done for what, 5 albums, four albums. Yeah, for just 4 albums, but still, like if he just kept doing that over and over again, I feel like that would have been less authentic. Because when you listen to this album, it's just like, this is so obviously like very, very authentic. I mean, even compared to like other pop rock of the time and stuff. Not that you can really call this pop rock specifically, but other rock music of the time. Like this album is incredibly confrontational for the time, like really, really raw, and just super in your face. Like there's this almost this bitterness and anger you hear in this record, in the lyrics of the album, especially in the performances of the record. Like on Tombstone Blues, like that song is just so rugged, and it's just unlike. It's so much else from this time, that like this is just such a real expression for early rock music that like, I mean, yeah, well, it did define so much of what the genre would be later. I would argue, and I don't know how true this is. I guess you'd have to ask the artists who are still alive, but this sounds a lot like what the Velvet Underground would have been inspired by just 2 years later. Like some of their songs, you know, for as experimental and abrasive as they still sound to this day, whereas this sounds a lot more plain to modern ears, there are definitely songs on like the debut Velvet Underground record that sound a lot like some of the stuff on this, it's just like, there's something so cool about that he was able to just be like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna do this because like this is what I want to do. This is the best way to get across the messages and the lyrics that I want to get across now. Which, by the way, compared to like earlier Dylan stuff on this album and the last one, but these early rock records of his, like his lyrics took this really mysterious, really cryptic, and really I don't want to say detached, but there's like a detachment you as a listener hearing them, where it's like to even interpret these songs or begin to interpret them. Well, a lot of them I think are pretty easy to interpret. There is this degree of separation now where like on the folk records, it was very much like coming from Bob Dylan. There are, you know, the protest songs. There are songs about current events. There are just songs about love. There's some really stuff that like is just coming straight from Bob Dylan that you as the listener can associate with that. And you kind of form that personal connection as is common with folk music, and that's just gone on this album. Like everything are these like weird stories with like these wacky characters who just say and do ridiculous things. You've got like Desolation Row, which is just this really, really long diatribe about how like every mythic figure of Western culture prior to this point always winds up in the same depressing, worthless, like dead end place. And lyrics like this, like they have incredible meaning to them, but at the same time, it's just like him as a narrator, his perspective has changed so much.
Yeah, and so much of what's here too. I mean, you take it in the context of the times as well. I mean, this is still largely a time frame where like crooners are still dominating. Like coming out of the 40s and the 50s. Like this is not something that would have been like, think about listening to this at the time in 1965 on the radio. You have still early upstart like essentially boy bands of the day and pop stars like that, and then you have something like this, which, I mean, even like a Rolling Stone at the time probably would have been very controversial. Now, if you listen to it, it's like, obviously not, but so many of the political and cultural undertones that are in many of these songs as well. It's just such an upheaval from, I'm sure, what would have been popularly played on everything else.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, and it's really interesting because I don't think that Bob Dylan got cast as a protest singer a lot in his early career, which really pissed him off. I mean, it's an accurate descriptor, but at the same time, I get why it pissed him off. I guess like he just viewed his songs as coming from a different place than that. But when you listen to something like "Blowing in the Wind" or "With God on Our Side" or songs like that, or "Times They Are Changing," these are very direct protest songs, I guess, whether he would like them to be called that or not. But when you listen to like stuff on this album, there's stuff like Tombstone Blues, stuff like Ballad of a Thin Man, that are very much like cultural satires. Tombstone Blues mocking the absolute absurdity of Americana, in an era with the Vietnam War, in an era with, just that was horrible for civil rights. I mean, I guess this year was a watershed moment for civil rights, moving them forward, but like in terms of the cultural, what would be the word I'm looking for? Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know, just the culture of the time. It was so awful, and like even though good things happen around this time, like that, well, it never went away, but it was just such an extreme time politically and culturally, like, and so songs like that just such a direct parody, but again, like that degree of separation is there, which is so cool. And on Ballad of a Thin Man, it's like this mockery of hipster culture of the time, which is funny because like that was something that he really hated, but he got cast with all the time. And even albums like this and going forward, that was still like seen as his lane. But even at this time, he was already mocking it. And it is just, there is just something I think so incredible about the way that these topics are approached on this album. Like it's, I mean, obviously he was an incredible lyricist, like just among the best, if not the best, in all of rock and popular music. But, and I guess folk too. But it is that combined with this sound here that I think is just so impressive. And what's this album captures so perfectly compared to anything else from this time that I've ever heard.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, it's like I wouldn't even consider it necessarily sonically complex. Like we definitely listen to more sonically complex albums, yet it's like minimalistic in such a way that everything is very precisely placed, and it all just meshes so well together that acoustically I feel like sometimes obviously like too much is too much. And in this case, everything that's there just feels so meticulous that it all comes together in such a great way on every single track here.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, it's not even just that though. It's like all the musicians play so loosely. Like the songs are so specifically um, created, and they're very repetitive too. So whatever the band's playing at the beginning of the song, you're probably going to be getting for the majority. At least the majority of it, if not all of it, and it is so precise that you're able to focus in on Dylan. But just talking about what the band members are doing here too, like even though the music's simple, they all bring like so much grit to it because again, there's like this looseness, especially in a song like Tombstone Blues with the guitar playing. Like it sounds amazing, but it is so it's so just raw, which is really cool. Like I don't know, it's something that the album before this kind of has a little bit. That album is maybe even jammier in some of the rock tracks there, but there's just like it's so thoroughly uncomposed on a lot of that record. It sounds like jamming a lot of the time. Like half of the rock songs on that record sound very similar. Whereas here, this is like every song sounds distinct on this album. They all give you this one musical idea and one lyrical idea, and it is tackled like with so much, yeah, with so much precision. Even though, but they do it in a way where it sounds like it's just off the cuff, which is really hard to pull off. And I mean, I'm sure to some extent that there was definitely like a jammier element to this album too, but it's done in such a better package, like especially with a song like a Rolling Stone, you know, like just such a beautifully made song in like every single way, like and Desolation Row, which is the only folk song here with only Bob Dylan the acoustic guitar, is just captivating. It's one of the best songs ever, period. Greatest works of poetry and music. And yeah, I don't know, it's just like that. It's just amazing how every single one of these 9 tracks stands out to me. Like I can remember exactly what it is, and exactly what he's talking about on it, and it's like it's such a great package all around this album, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like you get a lot of outside artistic influence too, because a lot of the lyrics now, whether it was drug induced or not, are very surreal, but not surreal in the like late Beatles surreality, more surreal and like this, like so close to being grounded that it almost makes sense, but it's kind of, you know, it's like a weird allegory for something that is just complete nonsense. And that's, you know, that obviously surrealist movements were earlier than this, but just to feel some of that come into the tracks on here, I think is really interesting as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and it's half and half too, which I like about it. I don't think this album is so like cryptic the whole way through that you're just kind of lost. Like some songs are and some songs aren't. I mean, like a Rolling Stone is a very, very specific and easy to understand story of somebody who has essentially cast themselves out through their own actions and their own misdeeds. And but the you know there's a it's amazing, like for a song that is so obviously sympathetic and emotional and so like will remain relatable forever. There's so much snark to the lyrics too at the same time, um, which which yeah, I think this is really cool. But yeah, and then there's like the more directly blues influenced songs like It Takes a Lot to Laugh, which again are a lot easier to understand too. And I think it's good that there's variety on that front. That I think this album's really fun to interpret as opposed to just being like confusing.
Right. Yeah, and I do like what you've mentioned, Lewis, now twice about like how cutting the performances are on these, because it's like Bob Dylan does not have a necessarily intense voice, right? But the way that he performs these songs, you can feel the sharpness, you can feel the distaste and the disgust for everything that's going on around him, and it like hits so strictly to the core on most of these tracks that it's just very interesting to, you know, try to understand and relate to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much else to add if you want to wrap it up now, I guess.
Sure. Okay, so with all of that, I mean, obviously, I think that everyone knows I'm about to give this one a pretty high score, but I would just say, like, obviously front to back, I really enjoyed listening to this. It was the first time that I've listened to it fully. I know most of the tracks on here. I mean, many of them are very famous and have been covered many times, although I don't think anyone does it better than Dylan on this album. There isn't necessarily any track on here that I even would say I did not enjoy. I think that it just flows so smoothly for its entire run as well. And each of them, although as we kind of talked about, aren't necessarily sonically complex, and the refrains and the chorus are repeated pretty much over and over and over again, it all still blends so well together that it's just such a great listening experience. So that, I think I give this one as high as a 9.5. It may be even a perfect 10. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and put it down. Perfect 10. I absolutely recommend it.
Yeah, and I'll give it the 9.5. If I have any problem, I guess it's just that the mix of Bob Dylan's vocals and the harmonica is painful sometimes. Especially the harmonica can really, really hurt. And that's the only negative thing I'm gonna say. And even then, like, on some tracks, the harmonica being so loud and being like just painful actually kind of works. So it's, it's whatever, take it or leave it, I guess. But yeah, no, this album is just amazing. Like, I second everything you said pretty much. Of course I recommend it. I mean, it's an album you kind of have to hear. Like, if you're going to get into music at all, it's an album you have to hear, because it is like one of the most essential and important records ever released. And I think it holds up too. It's a really cool album. I think, like, compared to a lot of classic records, there is a very confrontational nature to this one that makes it really interesting to listen to, I think. And especially for, like, singer-songwriter albums, this is just so rad. So yeah. Do I have it?
Lewis, I see you got called out there, but I just want to mention that I don't think on this show we've ever given anything than half scores.
Yeah, I don't. We don't do the 0.25, 0.75 thing. But oh no, my rate your music page doesn't line up to exactly what I said on Get Recc'd. I don't know how I'm going to recover from this, Steven. I think we have to give up.
Yep. So this album's trash. Moving on. Lewis, it's not often that we have two absolute bangers on this show, but man, here we go. So Lewis, I recommended to you last summer's smash movie hit, The Angry Birds Movie 2. This was a movie produced or distributed by Sony, so you know the track record is there, and developed by Rovio Animation, the creators of The Angry Birds, the video game. Lewis, what did you think of The Angry Birds Movie 2?
It's really funny. A little bit of backstory. Steven and I don't remember when we did this, but I know we did. We watched the Angry Birds movie together. I don't remember why. I don't remember when, but we did. It wasn't in theaters. That's all I know. So I don't know. And it was like one of the worst things like I'd ever seen. I don't know if it's like widely considered to be this or not, but it's pretty much like in like emoji movie category for me. Like that well, I think for both of us, because I remember it was just really unbearable for both of us. And
I honestly, to this day, still cannot think of something that I dislike more than the Angry Birds movie.
Nice.
It was that bad.
Yeah. And just to briefly touch on that, like, there was the weirdest thing about that. Okay, so there's so many bad things about that movie. Like, it was terribly unfunny. It was paced terribly. It was so much. But the weirdest thing about that movie that still just baffles me to this day, and I mean still does even after seeing this, like, that movie was like weirdly like the messages that film were just unbelievable for like the Angry Birds movie, because when you really looked at what the film was like saying, I swear to God, like a 4chan alt-writer got into the writing board for Angry Birds Movie 1 and wrote like this like anti-immigrant, like xenophobic, like like in the movie, the pigs like show up to the bird island and they pretend that they're doing it in the name of like, wasn't it like literally like in the name of diversity? Like they didn't say that, but that was kind of the idea. Like everyone was welcoming them. And then like they hid like an army of pigs under the floorboard to come and steal the bird's eggs. And it was the red bird, who was skeptical of it the whole time, who turned out to be right in the end. And it was fucking freaky. Like, and that's the biggest thing I remember from Angry Birds 1. And like, watching this movie, I swear to God, I'm just right about what happened to that movie because somebody caught on and was like, wait, we can't do that. And then they like, so in this movie, they make the pigs and the birds like form a truce and be friends now. And they kind of just try the best that they possibly can, I guess, as far as the sequel can do, to not really acknowledge what they did in the first one, which I mean is a good thing, actually. Like, I'm not going to complain about that, but it was just really weird.
I just want to mention, someone's commenting a question, what? And we thought the same thing.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what to tell you. Like, go watch it. I mean, don't. But I'm serious.
Yeah, please don't. Absolutely do not.
Yeah, you don't need to. Go read the Wikipedia plot. I don't know. But I swear to God. So anyway, yes, the Angry Birds movie. I'm not kidding. Okay. Right off the bat, I want to say something that if there's anything surprising about the Angry Birds movie 2, it's that I don't think this movie was terrible. Which I know, right?
I am 100% right there with you. The very first thing I thought after watching this was it was mediocre, but like at least it was watchable.
Yeah. At least...
Whereas the first one wasn't even mediocre. Like that bar wasn't even met. So this one was like, oh, this is a fine children's movie.
Yeah. Well, I would emphasize children because this is the kind of like kids or family movie that's really only going to be good for children, I think. Like, I mean, duh, right? It's a kids movie. Like, I guess you expect that. But, you know, that's not our audience. Right off the bat, you know, if you're a child, if you're from the age of like 4 to 9, I recommend the Angry Birds movie too. Okay, so we'll get that out of the way. But assuming you're not. Yeah, it's like... So I'm not saying this movie's good. I don't even think it's really that close to being good. Though there were good parts, short parts, but there were some parts of the movie that were actually okay. There were like a few actually funny moments in the movie. Only a few. I mean, man, I'm really reaching, but I don't know. It's the Angry Birds movie too. I wasn't expecting to like any of it at all.
Well, Lewis, how about let's start with, you want to give just a general overview? Maybe let's put the spoiler up in case anyone...
So I didn't make a spoiler tag. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
I didn't think
God.
it was necessary. If you don't want the Angry Birds movie 2 spoiled for you, you might want to click away and stop listening. Yeah, you're right. I should probably explain the plot. So the plot of the Angry Birds movie 2 is that there is a third island now, and there's the bird island, the pig island, and this mysterious third island that is attacking both islands with giant balls of ice. So the pigs and the birds form a truce so that they can go and stop the third island from destroying them all. That is the plot of this film, and now, spoilers, oh no, the third island is like this eagle island that has, where the lead villainous bird was in a relationship with the eagle from the last movie who pissed in the water. That's all I remember about this eagle, is that he pissed in the water. That happened in the first Angry Birds movie. It was really good. And now she wants to turn the other two into a vacation island for herself, which is already kind of weird because I don't really understand, like, what's the whole deal with, like, freezing the islands? Especially because, like, she wants to go to islands that aren't super cold. So, like, why would you shoot ice balls at them? I don't know. But anyway, that's the plot. I mean, it's like, you know, it's maybe the best direction they could have taken the Angry Birds movie 2 in, to have like the birds and the pigs team up again because of how absolutely rancid the morals were from the first film. I guess this is, better. But it's like, I don't know. It's the Angry Birds movie too. You know what? I forgot something. There's a B plot involving three little kids who are.
Oh my god! Can we talk about that? That was
Yeah.
okay. So this movie, as I mentioned, I actually think it was pretty watchable. But that B plot, that was the one that I was like, I don't care about this at all. And they tried to push it so hard. They kept cutting back to this B plot where the little kids, they take their egg sisters out and then it floats away and they're trying to catch the eggs. At one point, they kill us. It's implied that they murder a snake, and they're like, that got really dark. And I was like, what?
Yeah. Well, and the worst part about it was that it did end up tying into the actual plot, although I don't know if I missed something because I was starting to zone out, which I was kind of, but I don't really know how that ended up happening, like why that ended up happening that way, why they ended up helping. They just kind of did because they were there, I guess. But for most of the movie, this B plot literally has nothing to do with anything. Like, nothing. The baby birds, like, I was thinking they're going to make some kind of discovery, is what you would expect. That would then tie into the A plot, but that never happened. They were just going for eggs. It was like...
Well, it did tie into the A plot.
Well, yeah, it did at the end, where they come in
At
and
the end.
they help hold the string together. But again, they don't do that because of, like, the eggs. So the whole
And then it was
egg
like-
thing was just random. It really had nothing to do with anything.
There had to be a contingent of writers that were just like, we absolutely love this B plot because the end of this movie is focused on the B plot.
That's right.
Again.
Yeah, I don't even...
It's like a stinger about the B plot, and it was like, what?
I guess it was like some kind of marketing thing because they thought the three kid birds were really cute.
This was during the summer of all the cute small child things, so...
Yeah. Was it? Was that a thing
I
in
think-
2019? I don't remember that, but maybe it was.
Yeah, the child from Mandalorian and then Baby Nut,
Oh,
hashtag Baby Nut. That was a little later, but...
That's true. You know what? I now I see what you're saying. Wow. I'm sure. You know what? I think Angry Birds 2 was influential. I will go that far.
It was ahead of its time.
Yeah, but anyway, that whole B plot was a waste of time, and it was like it felt like a series of shorts that you would expect to see in like the beginning of the movie. It felt like it was something they were trying to push that they could make like shorts of later. That's what it struck me as. Because as for its relevance to this movie, I really have no clue.
So I have some notes. First, I want to say that a bird dabs in a minute 30 in. So when that happened, I was like, oh yeah, we're in it now.
that did it. Yeah, that's right.
It only took a minute 30 for a bird to dab, and also someone to look directly at the camera and said, I don't know about the dabbing.
Yeah. So they didn't just dab; they said dab,
Yeah.
which is really the double whammy. I wanted to make sure that they captured that element of,
I did actually laugh out loud. There was like a speed dating scene for some reason that I didn't really understand, but the three main characters from the last movie go on the speed dating thing, and the one that's a bomb, when he's on his speed date, his date asks what he likes, and he says, I eat dirt. And then it cuts back to her, and it cuts back to him, and all this dirt just starts coming out of his mouth. And I found that really funny for some reason.
Yeah.
Because then later he starts talking about like all the qualities of dirt. It was actually pretty good. That was the only time I laughed or even chuckled.
Nice.
I will say though, all that aside, where the first movie went so wrong was literally everything that it did. But I remember specifically all of the characters were insufferable. Like literally the writers of that film wanted you to hate every single one of the characters because the characters never even redeemed themselves. They were just like these insufferable messes. I feel like this movie, I actually liked all of the characters. I felt like the characters bounced off each other well. They had the actors actually felt like they had direction this time and had a chemistry between them. And I feel like this whole cast of characters comes together pretty well by the end of this. Even the weird, like, James Corden, although I don't think it was played by James Corden looking pig on the screen there with the sweater, who was supposed to be like too chill or whatever. I felt like all of the characters here were really good. The villain was really fun. And then for some reason, it turns out the villain was mad because of a divorce or like a fled fiance, and then actually the child is the fiance's dad or something. Anyway, where the last movie failed in its characters, I actually feel like this movie made up for.
I would mostly agree with you. I want to point out, though, that I think this movie was, I don't want to say as bad, but it was close to as bad as the first one for me, up until Silver showed up. That was her name, I'm pretty sure. The sister of the yellow bird. I only remember.
Oh yeah, for sure. Until basically the scene where the pig comes and says, "Hey, I'm really trying to make a truce with you," and then they're fighting over who the hero is or whatever. Up until that scene, I was like, "Oh my god, we're right back in it."
Yeah,
and that scene doesn't happen for like 20 minutes
because it felt the same. I mean, like, you mentioned the dabbing joke. There were so many like social media references all throughout this movie, which is one of the biggest problems, by the way, because it was just really awkward. But yeah, like, so many things about it where I was just like, this is the same fucking thing. And yeah, I don't want to jump all over the place. I have some other thoughts on other things. I don't want to get to them.
Yeah, it's hard to describe without having seen the first one, because honestly, the first one failed in every regard.
But I will,
Luke,
okay.
You mentioned it, like the pacing, like something was just so wrong with the pacing that it was almost disturbing to watch. And until that 20-minute mark where they get the whole team together, I was right back in it. I was like, how do they not understand how to just make their characters act like people, like actual physical beings? How do they not understand how to make the story progress in a logical way? And then finally they got there, thankfully.
Yeah, no, but that's what I was going to say. Like, it's that, even just the, like, audio editing of the dialogue and the spacing of every line is so unnatural, like, in the beginning of this movie. And it does change, thank God. But, like, that was something that the first movie did the entire way through. But, like, I get the impression they want to be like a Lego movie, you know, where it's, like, super snappy and the jokes are just, like, rapid fire. You definitely can tell, like, that's what they're going for almost all this movie. But in the beginning, they just like in the first movie, they just have no idea how to do it. Like, everything's just, like, happening so quickly, but the timing is not precise. And so none of the jokes land. Every single joke is just like, ugh. Like, that's how you feel after they say it. You're just like, oh God. And I felt that way for a lot of it. But no, I feel like when Silver shows up, first of all, she's the first character who acts like a person, where I'm like, oh, okay, that's how characters act. I almost forgot. And when she shows up, her chemistry with every character is actually pretty good. If there's something I want to compliment about the entire movie, it is that. And I would agree that, like, from that point on anyway, the character chemistry on the whole is actually pretty solid. This may seem like something that's should just be obvious, and it should, but it isn't to the Angry Birds movie franchise. Like, when people talk, they actually act like they're talking to each other and responding to each other, which I appreciated because I didn't think I was going to get that. So, you know, if there's one consistently pretty decent thing, I would say it's that. And I do think that some of the jokes that they get from the characters playing off each other aren't too bad. I mean, it depends, because this movie definitely, it's mostly miss when it comes to the humor. I was going to say it's hit or miss, but that implies it's like 50-50. It's not. Most of the jokes are just awful. But at least there is some reprieve with some of them actually being okay. But the biggest thing I want to mention humor-wise that infuriated me in this movie was, I don't know what the audio editing team was doing. I don't know if they were just trying to sell a soundtrack. I mean, that was probably it. But this
Oh my
movie,
god, I forgot about
yes,
this.
the song, they just like play a random song, like so much. And especially actually, once the movie starts getting better, that's when they start doing it more, which made me really mad because I was just like, man, like we actually might have somehow gotten a salvageable movie here, but it's like they kept trying to throw it away. There are like random dance-off scenes, random scenes where they just play a clip in slow-mo and play a song to it, like one part where they're just standing and it plays Turn Down for What? And I was just like, why? Like,
Can I want to be honest, Lewis. I actually kind of missed the Trolls actors, um, like covering songs after watching this.
yeah, honestly. It's because it's almost
Because
like
it
it's
really
going
is
for the
just
same
like,
thing. Yeah. I don't
yeah,
know.
it really is just like they took a song and just played it as a second audio track, and then there even becomes at one point a rom-com moment where like they flash back to the villain and the eagle who was the fiance or who was the fiance at the time. They have like it's supposed to clearly be the 90s, and I don't remember the song, but they have a 90s song that like sparked their romance or whatever, and again they just like play it as a second audio track. And then, like a romantic comedy, when he tries to bring her back, he sings the song to her, as in the implication is that these audio tracks, like the Angry Birds universe, actually includes the music of our universe.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Well, and it's like they want you to laugh just because you like know the song. Like, haha, I know what that is. Like, and it's
I listen to that.
yeah. There's one part actually. There was one joke in the B plot that I actually would have liked.
Wait, hold on, Louis. The last thing I want to say about that though is like it's not even like modern songs. It's like songs that they probably didn't have to pay very much for.
Yeah.
Think of like I Will Survive, like that level of old classic song just randomly thrown in every now and then.
Yeah. Axel F. They played Axel F at one point, which is just like, what the hell? Yeah, okay, no, so there was a joke in the B plot. One of the only good jokes on paper, anyway. I actually kind of liked it. So they're going to get the eggs. They're up on a cloud, so they inflate one of the kids so that they start like floating to get the eggs. But then once they do that, they can't like untie her mouth, so they just keep floating up until they like literally go into space and they fly past like planets and the space station. And I was like, it's a good visual gag. At least it would have been. But as soon as they reach Space Oddity by David Bowie starts playing. And it was just like, what the hell? It was so unfortunate, too, because in a lot of these other scenes where they play a song, it's like literally nothing funny was happening, so they just stuck a song in to make it funny. But in this case, it was like you actually had like a pretty funny joke here. And they just like killed it with that. But yeah, I really don't know how I can overstate this, because especially in the last like quarter of this movie, it is absurd how many songs they play. Like it's just over and over again, like a new song. Or well, there's one song they play twice, or at least one of the songs they do. They play Hello by Lionel Richie 2 times. And it's not even like a running gag. It's just like a different bit, but they play the same song again because I guess they didn't have money to buy another romantic song, so that was just kind of the one they had. Or it's the easiest one to reference. I don't know, but oh god.
Apparently there were 2 singles that came off of this movie. Kesha wrote a single and Luke Combs wrote a single. So that should give you an idea of the soundtrack. Lewis, the other thing, speaking of Luke Combs and Kesha, the other thing I wanted to talk about is the acting credits on this movie are insane. Like the amount of people and talent that they got for this movie, I was like, how? Why did everyone sign up to be on this movie?
Especially considering it's
I won't
sequel.
talk about Yeah, I won't talk about all the big names because there are definitely big names. A lot of them mostly comedians. You have like Aquafina and everyone from the first cast, like Jason Sudeikis and Josh Gad and other. Leslie Jones is the villain, but I will talk about the like 5 YouTubers that are in this movie.
Wait,
Those YouTubers being Anthony Padilla, uh, Miranda sings,
I
David
didn't
Dobrik,
even know
and
that.
that kid who yodeled in a Walmart.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they're all in this movie.
Well, that just goes to show, right? I mean, I didn't even know that. Okay, great. Wow.
Yeah,
That's star power right there.
that is. Only the best quality content.
Yeah.
Nicki Minaj is also in this for some reason.
God, I didn't even know all this. That's
Hmm.
ridiculous. I mean, I could tell it was like an obvious celebrity voice cast, and they're fine. Like it's like any celebrity voice cast where it's usually like not the best because they're not voice actors, and they kind of just sound like themselves. But they're fine. Um, but it's just like I don't know, whatever. Anyway, something I wanted to mention before I forget. Is some of the technical aspects of this movie, and this was the same thing with the first one. I don't remember if it was worse than the first one. I mean, it probably was because like everything was, but there is something really disconnected about watching this, and it's not as big of a problem in this one as I remember it being in that one. But still, like, it's something about the lip syncing in this movie with the birds, like something about the beaks that they just didn't get quite right because and I don't know if you noticed this, but there is so much separation between like hearing the voices and actually seeing the characters. Like the lip syncing is just not right. I was trying to watch, especially like Red's mouth as he would talk, and like there were syllables they just could not get his mouth to do because it's like a beak, but it really ended up hurting it. Like it was just kind of weird. Like I don't know, I couldn't quite place the voices to the characters. I remember that being a problem in the first one too. But here it was just like, I don't know, it was still an issue. Because I will say, like, animation wise and art design wise, it's really not that bad. Like it's not that good either. But the art style of this movie is like more in line with like I want to say like a Hotel Transylvania than it is like a Pixar
Hmm.
or something. And it's okay. Like it's cartoonish. It serves the humor well. It's fine. I mean, it's probably as good as you're gonna get for a movie about Angry Birds, but it is kind of cheap looking, and yeah, it's just I don't know. I guess I'm sure it would have been hard to do because you're working with beaks, but they definitely probably could have done better on the lip syncing. I thought that was kind of weird. Um, Otherwise, though, I mean, it looks fine. It's like it's passable, um, which is pretty much the best I can say for it. I want to say I'm trying to think of things that I liked in this movie because there were a couple things. I there was a I cannot believe I actually liked this part, but I actually did. There was a bathroom scene in this movie. So just for background, this movie and the last one, but I don't remember enough about it. But this movie, oh, actually, yeah, there was that whole pissing scene. That's right. This movie really likes to do like the snot jokes and the piss jokes and it loves that stuff. Like you just see someone's butt and you laugh at the joke because butt. So this is that kind of movie, but but there was like a scene where the cast is in like a animatronic eagle suit where they're trying to fit in and they follow one of the security guards into the bathroom, and it probably could have been like the worst thing I've ever seen. Surprisingly though, it was pretty good. I mean I can't believe that, but it was a pretty good bathroom humor scene, so thumbs up to the Angry Birds movie 2 for that one. um, but anyway, like I'm trying to think what else. What other parts did I like in this movie? I don't know. The lead villain is like okay. She has like a funny line here or there. I know I'm reaching at this point. This movie's not good though, so I don't know what you want me to say. But like, that's some of the good stuff I can say about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I actually do feel like now that I think about it, there were a lot of one-off gags that I thought were kind of funny. Like they break the bomb out of jail, but it turns out jail is just his room in his mom's house.
Yeah.
And there's like the pigs bring in like a SWAT team to lay out the plan. They like drop into Red's the main bird ceiling and stuff, but then and they're like coming out of the pots and stuff. But then the last one was in the bathroom and has to like take his helmet down and walk out shamefully. I thought that was kind of funny. So
Yeah.
there's like one or two things here that I actually did laugh at.
Oh, okay. this, I don't know how well this fits with what we were just talking about, but I took note of this because this was like one of the worst jokes I've ever seen in anything. Um, Honestly. So in the speed dating scene, there's it sets up that Silver and Red are gonna get in a relationship later because they don't really, but it's implied that they do. They're because they're incompatible when they're dating. And in this scene, Silver tells Red that he has resting bird face. And then Red says that's not a thing. And I saw that and I thought for a second, like, okay, this struck me as like two different writers competing with each other because like one of them just had resting bird face in their head, like resting bitch face, and they were like, man, that's so funny, even though it's like not a pun. It's
The
just
4-year-old loved this one.
yeah. Well, yeah, just because it's a reference. 'Cause, again, it is not a pun. It does not work on two levels. It only works on one, and it doesn't even work there. But and then like another writer saw that joke and was like, "Wow, that doesn't make sense." So then they just had Red say it doesn't make sense, and I'm like, "What was the joke? Was the joke supposed to be resting bitch face, or was the joke supposed to be that resting bird face isn't real because it's like I don't know." But God, that was really bad. Now, for the record, there's one running gag carried over from the first movie that reminded me of this in the first movie. That's probably worse, which is there's like a mime bird who says, "Oh my God." And he does that like 4 times. I remember he did it a lot in the first one. And it's just like, what is even the joke? Is it that the mime is talking? Like, I don't know. But they kept doing that in this movie, so that was really nice.
Although I did actually get a laugh when the mime makes an invisible box and he gets hit by like a molten ball, but the invisible box saved him.
Yeah, that was good.
That was actually kind of good.
There really are like actually a couple of jokes here that were pretty funny. But it's just like I feel like it's mostly
you know what? Actually, I think the Angry Birds movie 2 is the best movie I've ever seen. I think I'm gonna take it back.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, it's kind of amazing. It's probably the best sequel ever. No, honestly though, like if I had to think of like sequels that are better than the original, like to a surprising degree, this is one of the most surprising things because I was expecting this to be worse. I mean, Angry Birds movie was real bad. But like,
I guess we gotta watch Trolls World Tour next.
Oh shit. Yeah, I don't know about that. But yeah, I don't know.
Look, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I want to wrap it up. I don't have much else to say. I mean, it's the Angry Birds movie too. Here's the thing, right? So like on its own, taken out of context of being a sequel to one of the worst animated movies I've ever seen, like I know I've sung its praises a little bit. I mean, I'm pretty sure I made it clear I didn't like it, but I know that I have been trying to emphasize that I was legitimately happy that it was not as bad. That being said, though, like in a vacuum, this movie is still like pretty bad. Like this is not a movie you should be watching. Not that you need me to tell you that. But yeah, I mean, most of the jokes don't work. The first like 20 or so minutes are horrible. There's like way too much referential humor to the point where it's just annoying. And I mean, it's just like there's just nothing special about it at all. Like anything good about this movie, you can definitely get like much better from other animated movies. I mean, no shit, right? But it's just there. It's like it's good in the sense that it's not the worst thing ever, which is what the first one kind of was. But that's really not much praise. So I'll give it a 4. And no, obviously I don't recommend it. But like again, shocker. Like were you gonna go and be like, man, I feel like watching the Angry Birds movie too. I wonder what Get Recc'd is gonna tell me whether I should watch it or not. Like, no, you didn't need me to tell you that, but there you go. Anyway.
I cannot stress enough how distressing it is to compare this movie to the last one, because the first movie is the hottest garbage I've ever seen in my life. And this is passable. Easily, a kid could watch this and actually quite enjoy it. And there were certain parts that I enjoyed of this as well. Once you get past that first however long 20-minute hump or whatever, it's a absolutely fine movie. It isn't great, it isn't bad, it just kind of is, honestly. I think most of the characters here are likable for the most part, especially once the whole gang gets together. I think the B plot is just the stupidest thing, and that they focus on it at the very end of this movie is so weird to me. But on a whole, it's just absolutely passable. So I would give it a 5 out of 10. And I promise you, I will say this and put it in writing. When Sony gets on their live action bender, you know Lewis and I are going to talk about the live action Angry Birds movie.
Yeah, when are you talking about the movie where the Angry Birds show up in the middle of two live action people's relationship, and they're like CGI, you know, and they show up and then like the CGI villain comes in and then they like run around New York? You talking about when they do that?
Yeah, exactly that one.
Yeah, that's gonna be great. I can't wait. Yeah, I don't know. The last thing I think is worth noting that I think everybody said when the first Angry Birds movie was coming out is that, like, it's just unbelievable that they're making movies about this. I mean, in 2016, which is when the first one came out, that was already unbelievable because Angry Birds was, like, so dead. As a franchise, it only existed in, like, marketing and stuff you could buy, like toys you could buy, and like I would assume like children's shampoo bottles, probably that kind of thing, you know. But like nobody cared or thought about Angry Birds or had thought about Angry Birds in like 5 years already at that point. But this came out last year, which is just like, what in the hell? And I don't know if Angry Birds 1 did well. Maybe it did. I guess that'd be the only explanation, because otherwise, like, I don't know why this even happened. But it did, and I watched it, so that's that. Great.
Oh, also, this movie has Baby Shark, and that was the worst thing.
Oh my god, you just reminded me of that. I forgot about that. Okay.
Baby Shark is on this movie's soundtrack. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, anyway, I think we should move on to the recommendations. What do you think?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, so we're starting a theme for next week. This theme we intend to eventually return to, and it is the best of any given decade. So it's exactly what it says it is. It doesn't have to be the absolute best thing in any given medium, so it can be like the best movie, the best album, the best game, whatever. It just has to be like among them. We agreed like top 10 level best is what we're going with, because in some of these cases, I or Steven may have already like given our best, and then it just kind of makes it difficult. But whatever.
Yeah, and Lewis, to be clear, this is what we consider the best.
Yeah.
Not from any list or anything.
Yeah, or even like, I mean, even you could say favorite if you want to take it that, or whatever. Just like, you know, yeah, something that we would say among the greatest stuff you can see or hear or play or whatever from any decade. And for next week, we are doing the best of the 2010s. I will begin. Now, in my case, I'm going to, of course, give Steven an album, but I've already given him like a number of what I consider to be the best in the decade. So we'll fill that out a little bit extra. So, Steven, I am recommending to you To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. This was Kendrick Lamar's third album. Came out in 2015. And it's like a jazz rap, also soul-influenced, funk-influenced album with tons of collaborators, including people from like Funkadelic, jazz artists, and just so many things to list. And that's all I have to say about that. We'll tackle that next time. And what do you got for me?
And the other thing I'll mention about this is typically with our recommendations and the way that the show is formatted, we don't necessarily give our opinion of a thing when we're recommending it. So just by this thing's nature, obviously, I know how Lewis feels about something. Lewis knows how I feel about something. And we probably feel the same way about the thing. So next week's discussion will be more of, honestly, probably just praise around it than any surprise as to whether I liked it or, you know, typically how this show format goes. So just want to get that out of the way. So, Lewis, I'm giving you what I consider one of the best films of the 2010s, and that would be the Angry Birds movie 2. We're back at it again, baby.
Aw, damn, re-rec! Can't wait to see what I think about that movie on a second viewing. Everything's just gonna click.
But speaking of the Angry Birds movie 2, no, I am giving you another Sony Pictures animated film. And actually, it's already been called out in our chat. Lewis, I am giving you Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which was a very late 2018 animated film, directed by at some people, and I just blanked. I don't know why, but we'll talk about it next time, I promise. Honestly, a film that I think not only transcends the animated genre, but also transcends superhero movies. So, Lewis, next week we will talk about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
All right, fantastic, and that pretty much does it. So I hope you're all excited for that theme to come up again at some point. We don't intend to do it in any order, just whatever decade we feel like it at any given time. But we're not going to do it every episode in a row here, because I feel like that would get old pretty fast. But, yeah.
Oh, Phil Lord of the Lord and Miller duo. That's who I was trying to think of.
Ah, yes.
Yes,
Looking
directors of
through
the
chat a little bit. What have we gotten? I haven't really been responding too much. Scrolling back a little bit. Yeah, that's right. I'm Not Here mentioned accurately that the Angry Birds movie 2 is better than Into the Spider-Verse, which is true. But, Steven already recommended it, That's why he joked he was going to recommend it again. The joke was that we're not allowed to do that, But it is, like, the best movie. It's just that, can't do it twice. So it's a bit of a shame, but...
no, that's a different theme.
Yeah.
Well, Lewis, do you have anything to mention at the end of our podcast?
No, as always, we're on Castbox. I try to put these up as fast as possible on there now, so you can listen to us on there. It's great to put on your cellular device or your mobile device of any sort, or even your PC. You can listen to it on the go, whatever. You can listen to us anytime. After we stream, we put those up every time every episode's on there, including the bonuses, so, check us out. Obviously, as we've been saying the last few episodes, please continue to stay safe and keep yourself busy if you can. But no, as far as like housekeeping and stuff, I don't think so.
Yep, I don't think I have anything else.
Okay, well, then with that, those were our thoughts. Those were our recommendations. Get wrecked.